Hello, my name is Raymond Karchevsky, and I am a living Christ. Today my message for you is embrace God's law, that of do no harm, and you have no need for man's law. Therefore, you may boycott man's law, as it does not apply to you, the living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient natural man or woman, son and daughter of God, infinite intelligence. Today, in our civilized world, mankind is experiencing the best of times and the worst of times. The best of times offer man the opportunity to come awake, to shake off their millennium forged satanic chains of mind control, which have bound the spirit of mankind throughout the ages via the satanic-ruled, mechanical, reactive, superstitious, emotionally unstable, and opposing warring intellect. These etheric chains which have bound mankind through their suggestible, malleable intellect to the state of limitation and ignorance, violence and aggression, and that propensity for dependence on the intellect has created hell on earth. That is the essence of reality for most people who are civilized and experiencing the hell that they cannot shake in their lives. Since man's fall from grace and his newly acquired ignorance, man has waived his God-given rights to divine awareness and has consented to his own satanic enslavement, to pridefully participate, to support, and to serve satanic-ruled civilizations with their imperfection of man's law. Divine awareness, your natural spiritual estate, gave way long ago to the realm of satanic intellect and its limitations of the temporal, linear-based, time-bound parameters. Its noise and opposing confusion overshadowed unbounded eternal life, which resonates silently at one with the holistic divine consciousness of infinite intelligence called God. In that moment, man fell to satanic temptation. The intellectual after moment of time began with birth, death, the beginning, the ending, the past, the present, the future, all fragmented concepts which took over the direct holistic perception of the eternal moment of a now-based divine consciousness, Christ consciousness, at one-ment with the holistic spirit of God itself, truth. In his own compromising consent, man fell into the abyss of hellish, opposing intellect, binding himself to worship, to serve, and to hold the intellect as his God, all for the satanic promise of being a God in his own right, a formula which assured his endless warring existence on earth, both within and without. It is such a backward consciousness that drives man to be snookered by such deceptive, positive imagery to seek peace, love, harmony, and understanding in his or her own life. Yet they refuse to see that their actions betray a hellish confusion which bears the dualistic, conflicted signature of violence, competition, power, and ambition, to rule not himself, but rule the lives of others. That is the satanic flaw of the dualistic intellect found in man's law, enacted by satanic representatives ensconced in worldly power of political, religious institutions. The worst of times being with it the threat of revolution, the corporate destruction of our food chain, the pollution of the air that we breathe, the pollution of the life-giving waters that we drink, the poisoning and the newly introduced diseases of the fish in our seas, the wildlife on our shrinking public lands, the confiscation of property, once held a sacred right to sovereign citizens, but now, through eminent domain, is perceived by our legalism-spouting public servants, which have turned into tyrants, as merely state-owned real estate, holdings of 14th Amendment slaves, who own nothing, not their own lives, not the lives of their children, which is long held by the bankrupt state as collateral for the national debt owed to foreign creditors who are now positioning themselves to foreclose upon America itself. Indeed, these are the best of times and the worst of times. There is no question about that. There is much evidence to be found on these internet news groups and forums that I write to, which point to the fear that the elitists have regarding the simplicity of truth which may be found in this particular Christ's words. My words are my actions. My actions are my words. That is the glaring evidence of a man of truth, possessed of Christ consciousness. His words and his actions are one. He is truth himself. Even Jesus of Nazareth gave that secret to all which was never received, never understood by the masses, when he said that I am the truth, the life, and the way. He was saying that God is truth, and he is at one with God. Now, what is the evidence that I speak of which validates these comments? May I suggest that you select at random just about any article that I have written in the last 19 years on the internet and observe the kind and the quality of responses, reactions to them. Few, indeed, have had the courage to stand up and identify themselves, to stand behind their own words with their true identities, for they lack spiritual insight, and they fear being exposed of their own level of intelligence, or lack thereof, by addressing directly the content of my simple messages of truth. That's a no-brainer. Anyone can see at a glance that that is the case. I have not been addressed directly by government, who has installed a stone wall of silence when it comes to my publicly related messages to all, while their assigned disinformation agents attack and libel and attempt to dispel the truth, which cannot be dispelled. Why? Why do these people hide behind fictitious names? Quite frankly, it's because they are cowards. They are lacking in spiritual sight and incapable of exercising any degree of integrity required of one to directly grasp and apprehend the truth, or stand exposed in their spiritual ignorance. It is only the blind, the ignorant, the cowardly, yes, and the stupid, who wade in anonymously and in numbers to attack, to ridicule, to gossip, to overburden the satanic intellect, which is a blind, mechanical, dead, reactionary instrument incapable of exercising living insight, direct apprehension of truth. They sing to the choir of other gutter-snipe ignoramuses who also lack spiritual capacity to create. All that is left for them to do is to argue, to bicker, and to destroy. Lacking wisdom and credibility, they overwhelm the reader with the lowest human common denominator of repetitious, base gossip and libel, since they have no capacity to create. As such, they are left with the capacity only to tear down. Much has been said since my kidnapping by armed corporate agents of the state of Oregon and county of Josephine, which are for-profit corporations, about the purported criminal background with the word felon irresponsibly flying around. Who and what is a felon? A felon is a legal fiction. The non-human juristic person, the name spelled out in all capital letters, which has been manufactured by the satanic legal fiction courts, which are responsible for administering the satanic man's law. That is what is called a felon. I am not that non-human, corporate legal fiction person. I have never been that person. I shall never be that person. I stood up to the Satanic Court of Josephine County, Oregon, and challenged that court to prove jurisdiction over this living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient natural man, and one who follows God's law, not man's law, not Satan's law. They could not. They have not. They will not. And this has been going on for the last 12 years. Remarkable, is it not? The corporate agents for the state kidnapped this living man and arrested him on the presumption that I was an assumed surety for the debts of the legal fiction juristic person whose name is similar to mine, but is spelled in all capital letters. This challenge was made at every one of the 20-plus appearances and 2 trials, 2 criminal trials that I had faced in standing before the bogus, fictional crimes that they had suggested that I had committed. Despite the obvious, the courts played hardball. They did not stand behind their oath of office and dispense justice. They have shown themselves for what they are, criminals who commit fraud every day that they preside over court cases, over fictional slaves. I expose the fraud of our American courts to all to see the revelation of how our satanic courts daily exploit and tyrannize each of us, those of us who understand we are living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient natural men and women who are not subservient, who are not persons, who are not slaves by our own open consent to belong to such corporate fictional government. I expose the satanic hypocrisy of the federal, state, and county governments which profess to provide channels of redress, and this exposing of the fraud stretches from the White House, the Supreme Court, the FBI, the Oregon Governor's Office, the Oregon Attorney General's Office, the Oregon Secretary of State's Office, 7 sitting judges of Josephine County, Oregon, and the Josephine County District Attorney's Office and Sheriff's Office. Not a single agent for the state of Oregon or the county of Josephine would answer under oath or affidavit the questions of jurisdiction that I had posed to them. Instead of simply doing the job that they took an oath to accept the office, they hid behind their institutionally erected stone wall of silence. With all their assumed power, facilities, authority, and unlimited public funds, not a single man could be found to stand up to the simple man of truth and answer the 23 questions that was put to them regarding jurisdiction. Not a one. And this goes on to this very day, some 12 years after they had kidnapped me and released me from jail, after they convicted the fictitious agent whose name is spelled in all capital letters. That is the fraud that they perpetrate against every living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient natural man and woman, brought before the court forcibly. These people unknowingly consent to their own prosecution and their own enslavement because they are unaware that they operate as wards of the state, property of the state, when they consent to belong to the corporate structure that pretends to be government, but is not government. It's merely a private corporation. They are public property, to be owned, to be exploited, and to be dispensed with. when they are of no longer use. This clear-cut demonstration of how satanic governments flee from the simple truth brought before them left the state of Oregon and the county of Josephine in commercial defaults of judgments amounting to millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars, all because they would not explain themselves when they arrested one whom they had no jurisdiction over, and they were exposed in such fraud. Mr. Governor, or I should say Miss Government, Governor Kate Brown, you have been instrumental in covering up this fraud over the last 12 years. You have now taken the office of governor, and you continue to go along with the cover-up. The people of Oregon demand truthfulness in government, and you are not exhibiting that truth, that integrity, that you swore an oath to serve the people. As for me, I will stand until my last breath to expose you and yours, your satanic minions who carry out the policies, the satanic policies that have enslaved those who think they are citizens, but know that they have given up such freedom, and they are but slaves. They have lost sight of who they truly are, and I am here to remind them that what I have done, so can they. There is no need to fear the threats of government, for it's all an illusion, satanic illusion, and it's time that such illusion end. I'm here to dispel the satanic mind control which envelops the consciousness of intellects. If we do this, if the hard-working, tax-paying folks out there, if they saw that what I have done, they too can do, if they have learned the lesson of the cases of the arrests and the detention, the incarceration of this living Christ, without having any legal grounds for doing so, for when they were challenged in court, they clearly found themselves violating the law, and they threw me out of jail. That's the illusion of satanic government, and I have exposed it. But you folks are still sleeping out there. You're still slumbering your lives away, not understanding why you're here on this earth. We must come to a point of sovereignty, our rightful state of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The prison doors which incarcerate millions and millions of prisoners who are prisoners only by their own consent, when they did not realize that they were tricked into accepting the sentence based on an assumption, a presumption, that the courts had made of who they were dealing with. The courts have no jurisdiction over living, breathing, flesh and blood men and women. They have jurisdiction, rather, over fictional persons, legal entities, and assign the presumption of being a surety for the debts of such fictional persons. That is the satanic trick that is played upon the average intellectually conditioned man and woman who sees themselves as citizens, as persons, as merely legal fictions. I write this to you to indicate that you're not off the hook as long as I'm alive. And your threats of martial law, I understand that's illusion too. And you will make them, and many will believe you. But you and I know that you have not that power. For it is the living, breathing, flesh and blood man and woman who created government. The creation can never be greater than its creator. That is what you're stuck with. You cannot overcome that with twisting legalese that create such confusion in the minds of men and women that they capitulate and agree with you, thus giving you jurisdiction. It is time for the second coming of Christ consciousness, that of direct perception of truth, of oneness, of holistic energy, where one's actions are one's words, and one's words are their actions. I have demonstrated that, and it is there for all to see, if they are willing to see. But for those of you who are too far gone, you have lost faith in yourself. You have doubted yourself. To you, there's no hope. And you will meet your fate. To the rest of you, I suggest that you look at any of the things that I have written in the last 19 years on the internet and see for yourself if there's any contradiction, in essence, any lie, deliberate lie that you can find. You will not find such, for the energy of this Christ is truth, and it can be twisted by others, but it cannot be discovered to be a contradiction, in essence, in and of itself. That is my challenge to you. And if you accept that challenge, you then understand that you possess also such power. It is the power of the people, and you are that people. It's time we take back control of the fictional entity that we have called government, and focus upon that, and dissolve the illusion that it is, and get on with living and loving and cooperating with one another. That is what we're here for on earth. Thank you for your time.